be recorded. I can't come, so that's great. So when Brandon says I've done a lot of software demos, it means it's not demonstrations, it's demolitions. So I've demolitioned a lot of software. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay. Move some Zoom things around. All right, can you see software demonstrations done well?
Yes.
Great. All right, so there's tips and techniques that I've learned over the years of presenting technical information. I just want to share in the chat, if I can find my chat window, it's a retro board link, but we'll use that for facilitating questions and answers afterwards. So you can go to that link now and put questions as you think of them during presentation. This is designed to be just me talking with no breaks. And then at the end, we'll field all the questions that you might have. I'll put the link back up at the end just in case somebody loses it in the chat history. So welcome to the world of presenting your software. It can be absolutely frightful for some, and it can be victorious for others. And we're hoping that give you some tips that you can be victorious. I'm Paul Borlin, as mentioned already. I work for Compassion International, and we release children from poverty in Jesus' name. And worked a lot of places, done a lot of agile all over the place, transformations, every flavor of agile you can think of, I probably touched on it. And I'm a senior software engineer right now, leading a team at Compassion, and I could say that Compassion is one of the best places I've worked at for the mission and all the people. So if you're curious, I usually give a spiel about what we do. We don't have time for that, but if you're interested in what Compassion does or sponsoring a child, you can talk to myself, Marcus, or Alice. So an overview of what we're going to talk about. So I want to talk about basics of presenting, some of the bare bones stuff, because if you don't have the basics, then you're going to crash and burn on the rest of it. You're not going to be able to deliver. And then we're talking about preparation beforehand. Then we'll get into more of conveying your ideas, some ways that you can convey your ideas, tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, seen other people do, or myself. Remote presentations we'll touch on briefly. And then the culmination of all this, the reason why I've created this presentation is how to convey those specific ideas or concepts. Spikes, research, refactors, backend systems, and even user interfaces. People struggle sometimes, like, what do I show? What do I do? There's nothing, there's nothing up there. So this is what I've seen, like I said, what works in the past and what I've done. Don't judge me, I'm still a work in progress as well, but these are kind of the concepts that I try to strive for as well. Also, I might say as a developer quite a bit, just ignore me. It's as a PO, as a developer, as whoever's presenting. And the presentation style I'm sort of speaking to is what I see most common is you've got a PO or developer or somebody up in front of an audience. But a lot of these techniques and thought processes should be used in any type of presentation that you do so that you can deliver your value to your audience, maybe it be one person or 500. So basics of presenting 101. This is one I struggle with all the time, is speak slow and clear. If you can't understand what you're saying, then you've lost your delivery. Speak up. A lot of people get up there and mumble. The people in the back room can't hear you. Talk as if you're talking to the person in the back of the room. Nobody else is there, but talk to that person in the back of the room, and then your voice will carry well. Remember, they're here to hear you. Some people don't speak up because they're nervous or they have fear of, I'm disturbing this big group of people. I just want to get out of here. But they're actually here to hear you. Speak to the audience. Don't speak to your computer screen. This computer screen actually will absorb some of that sound and people can't hear what you're talking. So clear a way for your voice to travel. Use movement. If you don't have to be behind that computer, get out of that podium, from behind that podium, engage the audience, look at the audience. Use the whole stage sometimes, and it engages people when you approach or call them out by name. I don't know what size of your audience, but move around. Don't talk to the wall. It's real tempting to turn around, look at the screen, get your cues from the screen, and then start talking to the wall. I see more developers doing this than other roles, but don't talk to the screen. Can't hear you. So, and pauses are, okay, pauses are awesome. People need pauses to separate from one topic to another or to process what you just said. So if you're just ramble, and there's no pauses in there, their brain's 5 sentences back and they need to catch up to you. So use those pauses often so that they can, if you make a point, make a pause. It doesn't have to be a long pause, but make 1 or 2 seconds so they can process. Remember, it's not a race to get to the end. A lot of people get up there and say, okay, how fast I can get through this, get off the stage. That's not a race. You're up there for a reason, delivering content. And remember, they're here to see you. Find that word you're looking for. A lot of people use stuff for things, or, like, oh, I can't stop and postulate. Use that pause to think about the right word that you want to say, and don't try to just gloss over it, because you're saying it for a reason you want to deliver. Avoid ums, ers, ahs, and any filler phrases. Well, I just said there's one thing I'm working on. You'll hear now. You're going to hear me say constantly. It's my warm-up thing. So don't fill the air with your voice. You have the floor. Remember, a lot of people will, in normal conversations, maybe in a meeting or one-on-one conversations, they'll use those ums, ers, and other filler phrases to indicate to the person, hey, I'm not done talking yet. I'm just postulating my thought. But the difference is you're in front of an audience, so you've got the floor. If you have a pause, nobody's going to cut you off necessarily. And if they do, it's okay. Sometimes there's valid questions that need to be asked at the time for clarification. So filler phrases like, I don't know, okay, so, actually, basically, right, well, like, you see, at the end of the day, I mean, sorry. And it's really hard to catch yourself saying those. So look at a recording of yourself and catch those things like, oh, I'm saying all the time. Speaking of sorry, a lot of people use filler noises when they're apologizing to the audience, like something that doesn't go right, and you're like, and so don't make those filler noises. You actually appear more professional if you're not apologizing to the audience. In general, don't apologize for anything you do up there. We know that you're working through stuff. You might things might not go right. You might need to postulate something, but in general, don't apologize. But if you spill a coffee on the person in the front row, you can apologize. But in your presentation, don't feel like you need to apologize at any time. Don't fidget. Maybe watch a video yourself, see what kind of fidgeting you might do. Use gestures appropriately to what you're talking about. Get to the point. I find a lot of demonstrations, what they could have explained in 1 or 2 sentences, they ramble on for 5 minutes and, we did this and I walked over here and I touched this keyboard. We don't need to know all that stuff. Don't ramble. Formulate your point in 1 or 2 sentences. Use that pause if you have to, and then deliver your point. Many things don't need play-by-play. I find a lot of developers, especially in presentations, they want to give you the play-by-play of, oh yeah, we did this thing, we did that thing, and then this didn't work, and we clicked over here, and then this. We don't need to know. We want to know what is the value you're delivering. That's the end result. So there's a few cases where you might want to give a little bit of a play-by-play, like spikes, why you came to a conclusion, but don't give me a play-by-play. As somebody at our ministry says, I don't want to hear about the labor, just show me the baby. AV equipment is very important. If you got AV equipment that you need to use, like a microphone or a projector or something, know how it works. Go out and test it out before you have to present. If that meeting room is open, go plug it in, see what happens. If you don't know, ask. Don't be afraid of the microphone. I am a AV tech at my church, and the biggest hurdle I see with people getting on the stage for the first time or even second time or whatever is they put that microphone up and they speak into it and, whoa, my voice, I can hear my voice, and they put it way down at their hips. Don't do that. We've adjusted the microphone volume such that everybody can hear you. So don't be afraid of hearing your voice. It's okay. It might be a little weird at first, but you just got to push through it. Remember, we're trying to get that person in the back of the room to hear you. And if it's a bigger room, a microphone might be needed. And don't fall into the trap a lot of people do is like, oh, I don't need the microphone. You can hear me, right? Well, most people aren't going to say, oh yeah, you need to pick up the microphone. They're going to just say, whatever. So if there's a microphone available, use it. Some basics of microphones, 1 or 2 inches away. Don't eat the microphone though, not in your mouth. So the guy on the left has got a good distance. The guy on the right does not. Pick it up. If there's a microphone stand, as you move back and forth, the sound goes in and out. So you want to pick it up if you can. I understand sometimes you need to type in your keyboard or use your mouse, so you can't pick it up. So that's good, but make sure it's close to you so the microphone picks you up. Don't touch the screen on top of the microphone. That'll make your voice more bellowy and more deep than it should be. Use the stem, and also it's bad for the microphones. All right, so those are some presenting basics, the very bare bone 101. So think about those things as you go through your presentations. Try to pick one thing each week, improve for the next time. Preparation, also important. No presentation should be done without preparation. So as you're preparing, do you know what you're going to say? A lot of people will say, oh yeah, this UI is easy. I know how to do it. I'm just going to go up there and do it. Well, you really need to prepare. Spend some time quietly, separate from any other work, and think about what you're actually going to say. Create an outline of thoughts, just any thoughts that come to your head about the subject that you're trying to present. Just write them all down, write them as fast as you can, and just postulate those thoughts, and just get them out. Then go back and order your outline. What makes sense in the ordering as far as those different thoughts? This is a outline I created for this presentation. Just kind of create a bunch of bullet points. Okay, oh, this is a sub point of this point, and reordered it as I'm thinking about other things like, oh yeah, this last thing I was doing, there's something else that I want to talk about. So this really helps you, one, get all the thorough content that you want out, and also make it orderly so that it delivers well. Then after that, go back and delete the cruft. Like I said about we don't want to hear about the labor pains. We want to just show me the baby, show me the value. So if it doesn't apply to what you're trying to say about your value, then don't put it in there. And make sure your presentation is to the point. Create a speaking outline or script. A lot of people will take their PowerPoint slides and make that as your talking script. And so they'll read their sentences as they go. We'll talk more about that, but that's not a very good way to present your demonstrations. And I'll explain more why later. But if you're one of those people that needs to have a lot of cues, a lot of sentences that you may need to read out, then make a separate script that you have on a piece of paper or on a separate computer screen or something that you can walk through. But don't put all that stuff on the slides. There's a difference between the show and the tell. So the tell is that script that you might be talking to. The show is what you have on the screen. The show should be very simple, and I'll talk a great deal of that. Create all the talking pieces ahead of time. You got your slides, your images, your infographics, maybe even a recording of the UI that you're trying to demonstrate. Create all that stuff well ahead of time so that it incorporates well to your presentation. When you're creating your presentation, get all your content out first. And then you can go back and add the sizzles, the jokes, the pictures, the transitions. Those aren't the important things. They help your delivery, but make sure you have expressively what your value is you're delivering. So again, always create visuals. And I'm going to beat on this over and over in this presentation. So you have diagrams and charts and pictures and graphs and slides, websites, and even logos can be used as your visual. So show me something on the screen and then speak to the show. It doesn't have to, you don't have to show me your back-end system, but you show something, and I'm going to talk in detail on that as well. A lot of prefaces here. So don't ever just get up and talk. It works sometimes, but there's some things that get lost in just talking. So more techniques later. Practice, practice, practice. Don't ever get up on a front of an audience, on a stage, one-on-one, anything without practicing your sprint review or demo. It's oh so important. It can be in your head. Go over it once or twice. I would say go over it at least 5 times. It can be to your team, which is great. You get feedback of different things you can improve on, something you might have missed. It could be to your cat. But at least once. Never ever get honest about practicing. And people might say, oh, but it takes my time, especially developers. I just want to develop, it takes all my time, and I don't have time to do my development anyways. So I want to ask you want to waste the audience's time? Maybe you have 100 people, 25 people in the room, you're wasting all their time, and they'll lose interest in even coming if you don't prepare and deliver properly. Count your prep time and iteration overhead. It's very, very important that you do. So as Piggy and Harold say here, we must be ready. Okay, next topic, conveying your idea, getting your point across while holding their attention. Also important to know your audience. What are they interested in? Developers sometimes speak to an audience as if they're developers. There's a lot of audience that doesn't know what they're talking about. So know your audience and know what they want to know. What are they interested in? If you don't know, ask them. Ask somebody that's knows them better, or better yet, go directly to them and ask them. Visuals, visuals, visuals. Always have something on the screen. There's always something that you can possibly show. So always create that. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Charts, graphs, diagrams, all this other stuff I listed before, and then I'll talk about more. A logo. Your company logo can be put up on the screen. There's brain science behind visual combined with talking. If you don't have that visual, they're going to focus on maybe your face, and there's something wrong with your hair, or maybe there's there's all kinds of things that they'll be distracted with. But if you just show something, just anything up on the screen, maybe it's a logo, whatever, their brains click in to what you're talking about, and they have something to tie with. Now, say your company logo is probably the super generic thing. There's probably better things that you can do, but show something. You can show your company website, especially if you're working on the website, or if your back-end system's tied to the front-end system somehow. Show your website. So they kind of get a context of, oh, this is the part of the website you're talking about. Any picture related to the topic. So like a compassion, I could put up a picture of a bunch of kids. Maybe if I'm talking about the availability of certain kids that haven't been sponsored yet, I can have a bunch of kids shown up on my screen, and that kind of ties to them. Oh yeah, a bunch of kids that are available as I talk through it. Your visuals should be visible. I don't know how many times I've been in an auditorium, the screen's not big enough, and you got a little flow chart like this, and they're talking to it, and like, oh, well, I can't see it. If the audience can't see what you're talking about, they're not going to hear a word you're saying. They're going to say, I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. So make sure your visuals are visible. So for an example, you could talk to your flowchart to start, but as you're talking through the flowchart, zoom into the different aspects that you're talking about so they can see what you're talking about. You could even go down to, in this case, down to the specific square or diamond that you might be talking about. Font must be readable. That's another thing. If they can't read the font, they're going to be, again, thinking in their head, I can't see it. I can't see it. Make short, concise points. Again, don't make full-length sentences and all this stuff that you're going to read. Make your points. Just a few items on the screen, and one point on a screen is ideal. So this is an example of a really horrible slide. If I had to look through this presentation, I would just be bored to death. So many words on one slide is really boring. Long sentences are really boring. It's really hard to read, and your audience either ignores you, what you're saying, or they ignore the slide. They can't read your full sentences and listen to you, and all this stuff on the screen. Where is he talking about in the screen? So, and don't read your slides. It's really boring as well. The screen should show your point. So in this case, it's just the beginning. This could be the beginning of your journey of creating a new application or something like that. But just showing this, it's just the beginning with the picture of the kid. They lock in, they have a context now, like, oh yeah, you guys are building a new software thing, and they're with you where you're at. Keep it simple, very simple. Like I said, one thing on the screen is good, one topic on the screen. More slides are better. Slides are cheap. This presentation here has 127 slides. Normally when you hear that, you're like, oh my goodness, that's horrible. But that's because people were thinking about that previous slide with all those words on the screen. If you had that 127 slides, that would be the most boring, dry, long presentation ever. Use animations for focus. Sort of like what I'm doing as I talk through it. You know exactly what point I'm talking about. Slides, so the slides on the screen should walk the audience with you. One thing that people might try to do is show up something, and then they talk on 10 minutes about the same thing on the screen, but you've moved on from what's on the screen like 10 minutes ago. So you want your visuals to walk this audience with you. They want to help the audience know that you're transitioning to a new topic. Make your visuals, your slides visually different. So you go from this black to this white. There might be some people looking down the computer screen not paying attention, but as soon as they feel that light, they're like, oh, what's going on now? So you bring some sleepers back in if your slides are visually different and contrasting. It also helps keep from the drone, the same slide style over and over again. People tend to drone asleep. So wake them up, don't drone. Don't show the following. You guys, if you're not a developer, you can beat on your developers with this. Don't show code. It's worthless. If a developer needs to convey how they did something, that can be done in a separate tech talk. But for a demo sprint review or a demo, don't ever show code. Even as a fellow developer on a separate team, I don't want to spend the brain power to figure out your code. I might not even know what your code says. It's kind of moot and pointless. Don't show your code. Logs, I see this a lot. It's like, hey, we got all these logs going by. They're pretty cool. Look, oh, look, there's that one statement. That means we did something. Most people don't care. They don't want to read all your stuff. I'll trust you that it works. Just tell me the value. Don't show your coding, nerdy, texty things like your IDEs or your tooling. It's not a software training time. We want to know what the value is that you're delivering. And so a lot of developers and other teams default to this because they don't know what to show. So hopefully we'll talk about what to show. So I'll trust you that it works. Don't show me your code and your logs. Show me the value. What did you deliver? Don't let your audience dig through a haystack of technobabble or a bunch of other stuff. Show me what's new. Emphasize it. And preface each show with info. We'll talk about this when I talk about UI presentations. There's a danger to just click, scroll, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, that's what we did. And you're like, what did you do? Give some context around it. Say, I'm going to click on this button and such is going to happen. Then you click the button and then everybody's caught up with you. So preface each show with info. And then after you're done with that, recap it again, exactly what you did. Pay attention to the flow. When you rehearse, is it jarring to you? Do you forget what the next slide is? If those things occur, then maybe it's going to be jarring for the audience as well. So put in those transition points, reorder your slides so that it's a nice flow for the audience. And have its transition slides and images. Give context before you start. So context is king, not content. Give them the full story around that. And I keep on alluding to, we're going to talk about that more. I'll give you ways to tell the story. Avoid TLAs. And a lot of you are like, what's a TLA? A 3-letter acronym. So avoid acronyms out of the gate. Don't start throwing, all these, ROI and TTL and blah, 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 all your company lingo. I guarantee there's probably somebody in your audience doesn't know what you're talking about. Even your team might not know what you're talking about. So use the full acronyms, full names first, and then say the acronym a couple times, and then use the acronym so they're caught up with you. Explain your acronyms. Maybe not everybody knows what ROI is. Return on investment. So explain that. Don't be Wikipedia about it, but give them some context of what it is so you're not losing delivery. So get your points across and hold their attention. So some tips and tricks I've seen over the years and things that have worked for me. Know your presentation software. Pick one, use it well, play with it. If you're going to use slides and such, play with it, research it, use the tool well. And add that sizzle. A lot of the presentation softwares these days is really easy to add some sizzle, animations or redesign or something like that. But know it well, play with it. It should be a part of your job if you're presenting software. Throw in a few jokes, lighten the mood. Don't just drone on here and there. Use a comic strip, a meme, picture, video, but sparingly. We don't want to watch videos all day. But this is best done after you got your content out. Be very mindful of your jokes. Don't alienate people. You might think, oh yeah, there's this great joke that between marketing and developers, and that's, I think, is really funny. Be very careful and mindful that maybe you and your developer buddies or your PO or your Scrum Master might think it's funny, but somebody in marketing just, got a knife to the gut and they're really upset about that. I had a time where I had a presentation. It was a really super technical, heady thing that I had done. And it was really super hard. I was having a hard time conveying or thinking of how to convey this presentation to my boss's boss's boss. So I put this Dilbert cartoon at the beginning saying to the effect of, it's really hard to convey to people who are non-technical. Well, rather than laughing, the president of the company took it the opposite direction, as if I didn't think he was smart enough to understand this stuff. So he wasn't hearing me the whole time. He was actually trying to, put little smites at me, saying, trying to prove how smart he was, and it didn't go well. So be careful of those jokes. Test your joke on several people, and very importantly, maintain your rapport as a professional. I keep on picking on developers because I am one, but I know a lot of developers. They have more tendency to put those crass jokes in, whatever. Just don't do it. Maintain your rapport as a professional. Jokes shouldn't distract. It should allow transitions or to hit your point home or bring the audience back in. And it's not a comedy show. Make emphasis points. So you might be, you say, this is what we delivered. Then you have to talk around it a little bit to explain some things and make some more context, but you might lose some people in that. After you talk around a little bit, come back to that emphasis point. This is the value we're delivering. Make sure that they know what it is, and don't make them fish through all your information of what did you actually deliver. Bring those sleepers back into focus so that they know. Use those jokes, images, charts, all kinds of things to bring them back to the main point. Use those pauses. Pauses are great to emphasize your punchline. Always restate the main ideas and points. So you want to state at the beginning, talk about it, restate it at the end. And then you can even have repeat visuals and slides. So you start your presentation or the piece of the presentation with your value with a slide, talk through it, and then you have that same duplicate slide at the end to kind of bring them back to the main point. And then state upcoming ideas and points. Make sure they know there's a transition. Break your presentation up into small logical chunks. Make sure you give an overview at the beginning, so what you're going to talk about, and then break them up so that everything's together. There's chapters in your story that you're trying to tell. One thing that I see that goes wrong is you have Sally that worked on project X and project Z, and then you have Billy that worked on project X and project Y. So they're like, well, we'll just let Sally go up first and then Billy go up next, and then they both go in and out of project X. You don't want to do that to your audience. So instead, you want to lump your presentation to the context. So Billy and Sally can talk about project X first, and then they can each individually go into Y and Z. Tips while you're presenting. Always be on time. Don't make your audience wait, and be prepared. Like I said, preparation is key. Prepare, prepare, prepare. I would say a good software demonstration would at least take you an hour to do, depending on what's going on. Close all your emails and messengers. You want that stuff popping up while you're up there. Leave time for Q&A, either in segments in between those chapters or at the very end. Pause a long time. Too many people are like, hey, got any questions? Okay, bye. You want to say, hey, you have any questions? And then make it awkward. Make it pause for a long time. Even maybe the MC for the presentations might cut you off, but leave that to them to cut you off. But make it awkward. There's people postulating their questions, remembering what the question they had before, and or maybe warming up courage. This is not your platform to let out your opinions. So some developers might be, let's back up. You have like an architecture group that wants this, and you have developers want this, and you have a QA department that wants that. This is not your time to fight that battle. This is the time to present your value, not to go up there and try to convince the world of your opinions. So leave those out for another time. Dress appropriately. This is something I fight developers with all the time, and I think Brandon's seen me fight this battle. I love it that we have casual environments. I love it that we can wear what we want all day long, and I'm totally for that. However, when you're presenting to an audience, you need to look professional. There's brain science behind how you look to how the audience will immediately perceive you, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So I'm not saying that, if you have a casual environment and you like to wear t-shirts, that's okay. You don't have to wear a collared shirt or a tux or a dress or anything like that, but wear your best shirt, your best t-shirt that day, so that people will have a little more, I don't want to say respect for you, but that they can hear what you're saying and not be caught up in what you look like. Are you nervous about presenting? Get over it. No, it's easier said than done. So if you are nervous, self-evaluate. Why are you so nervous? Are your fears warranted? Think about those things. Write them down. Why are you so nervous about it? And maybe it's you just don't have the experience. So practice to, preparation, practice to your cat, your teammates, get feedback from those you might think that are good presenters. And then each week or each time that you present, pick one thing to improve, only one, and see if you can do it that well. And then move on when you make that well. Step out of your shell. It's we're not, the audience isn't there to crucify you. Well, there's some places that might crucify you. I've been through experiences like that, but just they're there to see you, and the better you deliver, the more respect they'll have for you. It'll get easier with time. I truly believe that. Remember, they're here to hear you. Not everyone's Steve Jobs, but everyone can improve their presentation skills. Pre-record your presentations. So if you have a UI or something, or sometimes things don't go as planned as you're up on the stage, rather than trying to fumble up on stage or in front of a Zoom audience or whatever, pre-record it and play that, so that if it does go awry or you miss a point or something like that, you can re-record it or edit it. So if you're nervous, this is a great way to get over that or help with that. If you want to avoid mishaps, like I said, you want the ability to edit and try again. There's tools out there like OBS Studio. It's open source. It's really easy to use. You can record yourself and the screen. And you can talk on or off the video. You can talk to the video as you're clicking on things or talking through your presentation. Or you can not talk on it and just kind of record the actions that go on and then talk when you're actually in front of that audience. Be very careful when you don't talk on your video that you leave yourself enough pauses and delay so that when you are talking, you can keep up with yourself. A good way to do that is if you have several points to show, chunk those out into smaller videos that you can show and talk to those. So let's end the tips and tricks. Let's talk about remote presentations shortly. Yeah, we see you. Right, you have the right equipment. Can we hear you? Very important. Does your room what does your room sound like? Is it echoey? Is it got background noise? Make sure that those people that are around in your house or wherever you're remote presenting know that you're remote presenting. Find out if there's distractions. This is a classic video of early on the days of kind of a presentation from home. This guy's like work for the embassy or something like that, and they're on the news, and the kids pops in. So I love my workers' kids. I have a couple of stuffed animals next to me that I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? I love working with them. But when you're in a software presentation or a demo, make sure they stay away. I probably speak for a lot of people. Some people might be okay with that, but in general, when you're giving a demonstration of your value for your team, make sure your kids and your wife and your husband and dog and parakeets and all that stay away. So that's all I have. A remote presentation, short and sweet. So I'm going to click my remote now. All right, here's the culmination of the talk. All the stuff I said, oh, we'll talk about that later. Here it comes. This is the good stuff. So conveying specific ideas or concepts, whether it's a UI, a backend, researches and spikes, there's always something you can show. So you might say, oh, I don't have a user interface. There's nothing to show. I hear that all the time in my own teams, other teams. But I would say in this, you would be wrong, my friend. Be a storyteller. This is the crux of presenting your value. Tell the story from beginning to end. It's not just, hey, we did this, we clicked on this button, these little pieces. Tell the whole thing around it. Hey, we're going to edit the checkout button on the cart. But let's talk about the cart. What the cart is. Most people know what the cart is, but talk through the whole thing of the whole context around what you're changing. Give context. Oh, so important. Don't just say, we click this button and now you have a validation. What's the context? Why are you doing that? What's the reason? And tell the story around it. And remember, you've been thinking about this for the last 2 weeks, but even though the rest of the people in the business might know what you're talking about, they have not been thinking about this. So you want to bring them up to speed, bring them into your context so that when you start clicking and start talking about things, they're like, oh yeah, okay, I get what you're talking about. I don't know how many times I've been to demonstrations. They're like, hey, we changed this button, click, 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 click. Any questions? I'm like, what does that mean? So bring your audience up to speed. Don't assume everybody knows your context or story either. There might be somebody new. There might be somebody that doesn't normally show up. That's not new. I mean, the bigger audience you have, the higher risk you have for somebody in the audience not know what you're talking about. So give them context and tell the story so they're up to speed as well. If anything, someone learned your business that day. So in creating your story, there's 3 parts to it. There's some questions to ask yourself. There's your actual delivery, and there's some things you don't want to do in your delivery. And so we'll talk about that in each of the aspects of demonstrating your software. So let's talk about spikes in research first. What are the questions you ask yourself? What are you trying to solve? Why are you trying to solve it? We're not plucking something out of the air as a team and, hey, we want to play with AWS today. Cool. Why are you doing this? Give a context around it of why you're trying to accomplish that. Tell the story around it. What was your solution? How did you arrive at that conclusion? So give some decisions that you had to make during your spike research. Don't just say, ta-da, we chose Amazon, muckety-muck. Why? Why did you do that? How did you arrive at that? Now, again, we don't want to talk about the labor. We want to know the value, but it is valuable to know why you made the decision you made. So what can you show? This is the thing. I don't have anything to show. Let's say you researched a new thing called Elastic. You can show up their website. All you have to do is put their homepage up on the screen and start talking to it. You don't have to scroll around or anything like that or click or anything. Just have it up so they have some context around it. A lot of websites, if you're researching technology, they'll have marketing materials and pictures and images and charts that they use to get you to convince you to use their technology. So you can grab some of those things and even show those things up on your screen so you can give a visual context of what you're talking about. You can even, the best, well, maybe not the best, but one of the better things is to just show the logo of something you might be researching, and then show that logo week after week after week as you go through a journey. If you're just talking in the air, people will say, oh, Elastic, I think that was something you said, I don't know. But if you show that logo up, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that last week. And then as your software matures, if you bring up Elastic and show that image or plug it in to a diagram of how you did stuff, they'll remember that you had done some research on that before. So don't show diagrams. Where does this fit into your system? How does it apply to your user, your audience? So on the right side, I have a diagram there. You have a couple of users and some computers and such. And I have a logo of Elastic there. So I can start talking to that and they see a visual image of how that ties in with them. I'll show a better, I'm going to give some demonstrations of a good and a bad software demonstration later on a spike. And I'll show you an even better way to do this. Show statistics. Statistics are great, how the performance or how many users you could have online, whatever it might be of what you're researching. And show, mainly you want to show what the audience connects to. If your audience is that bottom user down there, you want to make sure that what you're doing is shown connected to what they're doing. Show the problem you're trying to solve. So you might say, hey, you remember on the website, on the one place, we click on that one button, it takes 15 minutes for it to come back with anything. That's what we're trying to fix with this research. And people are like, oh yeah, that button, I hate that button. It just drives me crazy. They're like that baboon here on the side. So if you tell them how it applies to them, and then explain what you did behind the scenes to improve the value for them, they'll make a little better connection. If you just talk, hey, we researched Elastic and it's cool and we implemented it, they're just going to go, okay, whatever that was. Visuals, visuals, visuals. Always show something visual. Everything connected to the end user somehow. So what's the value to them? You didn't just do this for fun. We don't get paid to do something for fun. We do it something because it's valuable to their business. Give context, tell the story around it. Backend systems, very much like the spikes, but you want to say, what is the value delivered? You didn't just change something and put a service somewhere. What is the value? Ask that. How does it apply to the business or ministry? How does it apply to each person in the audience, your customers, other teams? If you have a bit large audience, you might want to find out, what their span and what they want to know. How does it apply to them? Figure that out. What are they interested in? Are they interested in charts or metrics? Put that up for them. What are the benefits that you just changed? Is it faster? Is it cheaper? Is it easier? Is there new functionality? Highlight those things. And visuals, visuals, visuals. Your backend always ties to something that applies to the user. So show them how that ties to the user. Diagram how the change fits into the system. Diagram how it relates to the user. Backend systems, like I said a lot earlier, as you might have a website that you are tied to. So like in this picture here, on this website, if I click sponsor a child, maybe that hits my backend system right away. Explain that to them. Show where it's connected to the user. Show it to them. If anything, show a logo. If you can't think of anything in the world that you can show how it connects to them, show your company logo. Backend systems don'ts. These are things you don't want to do. Don't show your code, like I said. Don't show your logs. Don't show your texty, nerdy IDE things. And a lot of you don't know what IDE is, maybe. It's a developer interfaces, the tools that they use. And don't skip showing something. Always, always, always put something on the screen. Code refactors, so important. Developers really understand this. POs, get it at certain different levels. But there's other people in the ministry or business that don't know what that means. So help them understand that. So what have you improved? Why is that important? You didn't just decide to do a code refactor because, oh, hey, today I want to do a code refactor. No, you're doing it for a reason. What was the value to the business or the customers? Was it an impediment? You couldn't get the next feature in because of it? Was it wasting time? Did it have a faster turnaround in the future? So now that we fixed this, now we'll be able to give you the next features faster because we spent that time to clean things out. Where there's security issues, security issues are very important. We often gloss over until we get that security breach. So help them understand if it's a code refactor for security issues. Was there reliability? Was that service crashing every 15 minutes and you had some kind of process revamping it every 15 minutes? That's not a good thing to have. Did it save the company money? So maybe you've got this huge app that's just sucking your Amazon budget, and by doing this refactor, now you saved the company $100,000 a year. Highlight that. Or did you simply need to rearrange in order to put in the new? Sometimes you just have to knock down things to put in some new things. So use visuals like in the back end and the spikes that I've talked about. You give them context all the way around. They'll just say, we did a code refactor. We don't have anything to show. Give them context around it. Tell the story from the beginning and end of why this is important. Almost when you tell the stories about all these things that you can't see, you almost want to convey it as if nobody in the audience knows anything about your company or what your team does. You want to tell the whole story. Especially if you say, I don't have anything to show, and you took 30 seconds when you get allotted 15 minutes to do your demonstration, you've got 15 minutes to walk them through that. make sure you're on the same page, because sometimes as you're telling the story, they're like, oh, that's the page you're on. I thought you were over here. And then you avoid those miscommunications 2 weeks later. I thought you guys did this. I'm like, no. So make sure that you tell the story so that you're all on the same page. Put a lot around it. How does the audience fit into that? So house analogies is great for code refactors. So everybody's seen those home improvement shows where the home improvement people come in and it's a dilapidated house and we're going to do this and this to update your house and make it nice and open. And then like halfway through the show, the builder comes up and like, hey, we can't do this. We got to knock down this wall and we got to tear down this in order for us to have this nice thing. And the designer's like, oh no, it's going to break my budget. But the analogy of breaking down that wall, when the builder says, hey, I can't do this unless we break down this wall to do the new, people kind of get that at certain levels. Same thing with code refactors. Sometimes you just get to a bind and you're just like, I need to knock down this wall in order for me to put in the new stuff, the nice stuff that you're asking for. So that house analogy helps them tie it like, oh, you have to break down a wall to put in the new. Okay, I get that. You're not just, talking technical babble to me and just doing whatever you feel like doing when I have this feature that's waiting for us. Think of other analogies that might be helpful in those code refactors. So let's recap non-UI concepts, the spikes, the backends, and the code refactors. Be a storyteller. I can't emphasize that enough. Tell the story. Don't just talk about the one little thing you changed. Tell the whole story. And in telling a story, you're giving context. Don't assume everyone knows the context of story. You've been thinking about this for the 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever your iteration is. Bring the audience up to speed. If anything, someone learned your business. I don't want to hear about the labor though. Just tell me, just show me the baby. So in telling the story, don't give me your labor pains or, oh yeah, we had to do this and that other thing. You still want to approach the value, but you're building up context for the value. If you don't show something, you have to you want to make sure that your audience knows the value of your time. If you don't show, they'll wonder, are they working? We're paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars for these developers, and they're telling me that they have to do all this stuff. Why isn't my feature done yet? I've had this feature sitting on the backlog for 6 months, and you're telling me you can't do it. Well, why are you doing all this other stuff? And the worst snowballing effect to that is like, do we even need these people? I have my buddy Carl that he does WordPress, and he says he can do the same thing in 15 minutes and throw it up. So if you're not conveying to them week after week after week why your backend system changes, what the value is to the end customer, then they're going to think that you're just kind of gone off the rails doing whatever you want. And when the business wants all these features, explain to them why you're doing all this stuff and why it's important. When you're creating your story, brainstorm with your team. You'll be very surprised what they'll come up with. Often it's dismissed, like, oh, what can we show tomorrow? Like, oh, there's nothing to show, it's a back end. Don't fall into that trap. Start brainstorming, try to think of what you can do. Like, oh, maybe we can get this ball of yarn and pass it around to different people, and we can show with that ball of yarn, this is how things are connected, blah, blah, blah. So brainstorm with your team, you'll be very surprised what people can come up with, especially as you get better at telling your story. And don't immediately dismiss, there's nothing to show. All right, user interfaces. This can be the easiest thing because you already have a visual for yourself. But don't lose delivery. I see a lot of developers or POs lose delivery when they show user interfaces. Give them context. Why are you doing what you're doing? Tell a story around it, and preface each show with info. Tell them what you're about to do and why, and then show them, and then recap it. Don't just click, click, scroll, click, 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 click. Oh, hey, do you like it? Tell the whole story around it. Emphasize what's new. Ta-da, this is what's new. A good way to emphasize what's new, regardless of whether it's functionality or visual in your UI, compare it with the old. This is what it used to do and what it used to look like. And now this is what we changed and what we did. Sometimes if you have something new and somebody hasn't been on that certain site for a while, and you go click, 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 scroll, hey, this is what we did. Do you like it? And they're like, isn't that how it always worked? So make sure you do a comparison with the old so that you can emphasize what is new. Like I said, don't scroll and click so fast. Pause often. Scroll slowly, announce your clicks. You're going to click and then click because we can't all see your finger moving. We want to know when you do some clicks. So when you scroll, wait, remember you're showing them something. You're not trying to race to the end and show how fast you can get through this. You're actually showing them something. It's not a race to get the end. One other point I wanted to say about that. I lost it. So show how you got to that page. Sometimes in demonstrations, you show up at the one page and one section of the page that, hey, this is what we worked on. Click, click. Okay, where are you? How do you get to that? What is it? What page is that? Start at the home page. Start at the login and go navigate all the way through to where you're talking about, and then pause and say, okay, this is what we're talking about today, and this is where the section we're going to change. Don't make them guess where you're at in the application. Now, if granted, if it's going to take you 2 minutes to get from the home page to where you're going to go, don't do that. You don't want to, bore them to death. But typically, it, take you 10, 20 seconds to navigate to where you need to go and help the audience get the context that you're thinking of. Have a driver and presenter. Multitasking kills your ability to speak. So as you're trying to figure out the user interface, scroll at the right speed, click on the right things, type and whatever, it delays your ability to speak. So if you have a presenter that's talking about the value, you can have a driver, maybe the PO is the presenter and the developer is the driver, and the developer, whoever's driving, can take cues off the presenter. So it also helps you project your voice. The presenter can be out from behind the podium. There's nothing blocking, and you can be looking at your audience. Remember, if you're the presenter, don't look back at the screen to try to get your cues. You can look back and you can get your cues, but you don't talk to your screen. Turn around like, okay, that's where it is. Maybe stand sideways or something like that. You see it, or have the person who's driving turn the screen a little bit so you can see their screen, but don't fall in the trap of talking to the screen. Prepare, prepare, prepare. This is an easy trap to get into with UIs that, oh, we already have a UI. It'd be easy. I just do this scroll, click, click, whatever. You need to prepare. You need to think about what you're going to say. You need to think about how you're going to click through and practice that. Set up beforehand. Do any setup that you might need for, if the data needs to be certainly a certain way so that you can demonstrate what your feature is. Don't make them wait for you to set up all that stuff while you're up there. Pre-record. This pre-recording is fantastic for user interfaces to avoid glitches, to be able to try it again. I don't know how many demonstrations have been up on stage, like, yeah, it worked fine. And then you go up there and like, I can't connect. So pre-record it and play that for the audience. All right, so we've talked about a lot of stuff here. I'm going to culminate this into a couple of demonstrations I'll give, and I'll give you a bad demonstration. I'm going to skip like a middle case where somebody's using an IDE or showing their logs, or so you got some bad slides. But then I'm going to show a better one. So I'm going to show something that's really bad and something that's better. I'm going to use compassion cases. A lot of you here don't work in compassion. So hopefully in my better, you'll actually get the understanding of the value I'm delivering. All right, so I'm going to do some changing here. Oops. Stop. All right. All right, so here's being my acting. So we didn't do much this last sprint. We looked at Elastic, and the database was really slow and stuff, and we wanted to speed it up. So we looked at Elastic. We think it's pretty cool. We're probably going to deliver it in a couple of sprints, but we don't have anything to show because it's back-end stuff. So how did that go? I've had, believe it or not, I've seen demonstrations like that. When there's back-end stuff, they're like, nothing to show, just kind of ramble on about some stuff. So what's the shortcomings of that? Why did this take you 2 weeks to play with? And they're going to think that you're just playing with something. But we know as developers, we worked our tails off for 2 weeks trying to figure out this really hard technology. I didn't convey that. So what is the value? What am I delivering to the business? how does it relate to the end user in business? I just talked about my team working or looking at this one thing. I feel like, a kid in a candy shop playing around with something. Oh, I didn't say this, that I was going to give out some context that not everybody would know, but I didn't explain it, so I missed that. So there's other technical babble like database in there. What does that mean? Some people might get an inkling, but what does that mean anyways? And nothing to show at the end. That's the killer. That's the killer phrase, that we have nothing to show. And that's a easy trap to fall in if you don't have a UI or some other things to show. So let's try this a different way. Let's try a better way. The same exact presentation, but with a little more content. And action. So we worked this week on speeding up the child searches. So to demonstrate that, let me go to the web machine to show you what I'm talking about. So this is our homepage, Compassion. A lot of people are familiar with the homepage here, but let me scroll through to the spot I'm talking about, scrolling down the main page. And down here, I can show you sponsor a child. This is what I'm going to talk about here. When I click on this button, that kicks off a service in the background that my team works on. So I'm going to click on this and show you what the problem we're trying to solve. So we're going to click here, 1001, 1002, 1000. Okay, it was a little bit less than 3 seconds, but sometimes it can take up to 10 seconds or 20 seconds. So we're going to solve that problem, and we want to make it better for the end users. So I don't suppose you could speed things up. No Princess Bride reference there for you. So speeding things up. There's a mix of children that shows up when I click that button. So there's a lot of calculations that go into finding the right kids from which country. There's different age groups, there's different genders, there's different countries and regions, and there's all kinds of things, even the kids that have been waiting the longest that haven't been sponsored. All those different things go into the calculations that we have in the background to show the right kids. I've mentioned some of what the calculations are. I won't get into the nitty-gritty details, but there's a lot of things that need to be considered to bring the right kids at the right time to sponsor them. So I have a user here going to our website, and they're going to interact with that button, sponsor a child. When they click that button, like I said, it goes into our lookup service. Our lookup service behind it has a database. A database is a place where we store all the information about the kids, their ages, their names, where they're at, so on and so forth. Our service looks into that database, does some calculations, and figures out the best kids to show back at the website. This box here is what my team works on. The front actual website is another team, but the box here is what my team works on. So we wanted to speed that click up that I showed you. We looked into something called Elastic, and it seemed to be a better tool for the job. So what is the value of Elastic or the research we did? We found a 350% faster for the user at times. So this is great. We found actual better distribution of kids. There were some kids that got lost in the mix when we were using that database instead of Elastic. We hope this will help sponsor the kids faster. We hope it's be cheaper. It seemed our calculations, what we did for Amazon, this is going to be a lot cheaper. And it's easier to maintain in the database. There's a lot more capabilities that we found that we're really excited about that we can tap in for the future and use for other things. And this is the right solution that's designed for this job. Whereas the database is great, it stored the information well, but the Elastic really shines in making the right attributes available to do these types of lookups. We expect to take 2 weeks to actually do the work, but we're scheduled for 2 sprints from now, so it'll be 4 weeks before we start, and we're hoping for 6 weeks before we deliver. And remember, this is just an estimate or a forecast and not a deadline we set, but we're really hoping to get that button click faster in about 6 weeks. Any questions? Thank you. That's ending my acting. So in review for this whole presentation, so we have the basics of presenting. There's some things in there that you might want to pick out, review yourself, either recording or whatnot and try to improve each time. It's important that you have the basics down so that you can deliver your value and they hear what you're talking about. Preparation, oh so important. Prepare, prepare, prepare. No matter how simple you think it is, go off, prepare. We talked about some things, how you can convey your ideas, how to do your slideshow so it's a little easier for everybody in the audience, some tips and tricks. Touched on the remote presentations a little bit, and we culminated to this end, how to convey your specific ideas and concepts. So remember, you're telling a story. You're not just saying, hey, look at this click we did. It's great. Tell the full story. Give them context. Context is king. Content is not king. Context is. Visuals, visuals, visuals. There's always something that you can show. Brainstorm with your team and try to figure out ways to do that. Thank you very much for listening to me for about an hour, and I'm looking forward to some Q&A.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the presentation. Probably can't hear me. Thanks for the presentation. There's another good one. Make sure your microphone is close to your mouth. Right. Yeah, so we'll open it up. We've got about up to 30 minutes left. We'll go as late as 7:30 if there's lively discussion going on. So we'll open it up now for questions.
Well, this is Jill. As far as the time for the demo, how many minutes, or explain that?
That's a great question. It varies on your audience and how your business is structured. If you have like SAFE, you're going to have all your different teams presenting in the same block potentially. So you have to allow all of them to present in a time such that we're not sitting here for 2 days listening to demonstrations. But I think you can easily deliver your value in 10 minutes or less. Sometimes, in rare cases, you might have worked on 10 different things in your team for the iteration. It might take a little more time to spin up, spin down, do different things, but I think 10 minutes is kind of a cap for presenting your value. If you haven't delivered your value in 10 minutes, then maybe reevaluate what you're talking about.
So would you say that would be 10 minutes for a team? I mean, I know that's, teams are various sizes and
Yeah.
I get that, but when you were saying that, what are you imagining? Who is doing the delivery? How many people for that 10 minutes? What do you
Yeah, it's a great point. I was thinking for a team, but on average, what I envision a team working on in a two week time. If it's taking you, I could sort of hear what you're alluding to, maybe that if you've got Billy and Sally and Paul and Jason who all have to present at different times, there's that transition periods and ramping up and ramping down. I might even avoid that, have one consistent driver and one presenter staying up there the whole time. If the PO can't convey to the business what the value is of what a developer has delivered, and only the developer can explain it, there's a gap there. There's a breakdown. If the developer can't explain to the PO and make it well known what the value delivered, then maybe we need to have the conversation. So I would say, yeah, I was thinking 10 minutes for an entire team. What I think typically for a 2 week iteration, but there might be times that, hey, this just needs to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, we have our teams run on what we call a triad leadership. So there are 3 folks that are sort of leading the team. There's a tech lead, a PM, and a design UX UI. So typically there are 3 folks who are presenting for a team for us, and we struggle to keep it. We give them about 15 minutes each team, and we struggle to sometimes struggle to keep it depending on the week and the sprint, I guess.
Yeah, they're probably not talking about the value. They're probably walking through every little intricacy that they can think of. They're not
Well,
showing the baby. They're talking about the labor, maybe.
yeah. So yeah, the tech lead generally is giving, and then that's a developer. They're usually giving, kind of that demonstration of what the developers worked on, of what was actually completed during the sprint, and demonstrating that. The PM gives the, hey, this is kind of the why, and this is where the team's headed over the next 2 or 3 sprints. And then the UX UI is really, they do more along the lines of, they're more than UX UI, traditional UX UI. They are also doing a lot of the customer research. And so they're giving insights into, hey, we did this many interviews, this is what we found in those interviews, and this is how it affects where we're going over the next couple of sprints. And we ran this A/B test, and this is what we discovered. So it's a lot to fit in. Anyway, we struggle with trying to get that in, and also it's a 2-hour meeting that we have every Wednesday, or sorry, every other Wednesday.
That's
Yeah.
kind of cool that you have
Yeah.
people talk about A/B testing and all that other stuff. That's awesome that I haven't seen and gotten. I would say we have innovation projects that we do at Compassion every 3 months. We do a whole week of just innovation, and each team has 5-minute window to convey what they delivered for that week. There's a lot of teams that make it in that 5 minutes, and there's other teams that you get 5 minutes in, you have no idea what they're doing yet. So some of them aren't prepared. I think preparation speaks a lot to that, rather than come up in front of the audience and babbling on whatever comes to your head, but really having those points that you want to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Does it depend on what type of demo it is? Because sometimes you're demoing like a sprint demo to a customer or a user, versus, and that's usually a two-way conversation. And then there's the demo where you're just demonstrating, here's what we did. Very large audience. You're not really looking for two-way communication. It's usually just a show of what we did, and maybe a question and answer afterwards. So I think there are 2 different types of demos, and depending on the audience and what the purpose of that demo is, and how those go. So it sounds, Jason, like you may be doing more conversational demos where you're looking for feedback and there's a conversation back and forth. Is that right?
We encourage it, but we get little of it. I think that's probably the biggest point that we're struggling with and have for a while is we encourage the feedback either in context during that meeting, or say, hey, take a note and then come back, reach out to this team afterwards. But some of the teams are beginning to feel like they're just talking to the wall because they're not getting a lot of feedback from our stakeholders, who primarily are the C-suite guys, and they do show up all the time. Like, they're very consistent in showing up. All the department heads, that like it's a very well attended meeting. Whether they're listening or not is difficult to ascertain.
Would it be possible to? Oh, I was just going to ask if it would be, in your case, Jason, if there's any room to try to pare down that audience sometimes, or even just kind of on a like the day after the demo or something, or the day before. One thing that helped us get a lot more feedback was we would just have the stakeholder or whoever use and drive the demo as we were sort of explaining, here's what we built. And what was useful about that was because you got the nonverbal feedback of seeing if they were confused as you told them to navigate to a new page or something. And then when somebody is using something, you get a lot more, like, they're in the situation, and so they're no longer an observer of it, but they can actually just say, oh yeah, that's cool, or oh, I would have expected it to do this, or something like that. And as executives, it might seem strange, but on the other hand, it's their company, you know, they should like, you want them to use the product or at least know how to. So maybe there's option for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the best mode is definitely the one-on-one conversations. The best time I've done, I feel like I've had sprint reviews or sprint demos, is to have that tight audience, those stakeholders that really care about what you're doing, and you're sitting around a table having a conversation. But that goes beyond just showing it. That goes into, let's talk about where we're going next and how to redesign this. And those are valuable conversations. Whereas if you're giving a presentation in front of an audience, you don't have, you're trying to, you know, get through it. I won't say just get through it, but you want to show your value. And then those other design conversations are on the side.
Paul, great presentation. I had another question. You had a section called, you know, describe, show the new, and then also show the old. I don't know, in your slides, you had showed the new first on the left-hand side and then the old. I didn't know if that was just the slide, or do you start with the old and then the new? Or
Old first, yeah, that was just the slide.
okay, all right.
That's a great feedback, though. If I did do this again, I'll switch them back and forth.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, maybe you did the old, and new.
Yeah. So let me change that real quick, and we'll talk through this again. I'll do the whole presentation. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, got it. It was kind of an aha moment for me. I thought, well, normally I would think you do the old first and then the new, but maybe your experience says something different.
Yeah. Yep. And it can be tricky with the old versus new because you've deployed everything out to production or such. There's nowhere to do the old. So what I've done with teams is before we even start working, we screen record what the old was, and then we can play that video at the end if you don't have the luxury of having multiple places to deploy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's preferable to have one person sort of as the spokesperson for the team demonstrating consistently, or to switch up the responsibility and the privilege so that everybody kind of gets a chance to try out that role?
And I would say make everybody get up there, make them get out of their comfort zone, make them learn that soft skill of how to convey information to someone else. However, if you're like at a huge crux point, you're like delivering this, hey, this is what we've been working for 6 months and this is the culmination of it, and you're delivering to the CEO, maybe you want to find your best presenter or the PO. But you know, sometimes developers, they just can't get the words out, but through practice, I think they need to learn the soft skills. So even in day-to-day work, that when they're talking to somebody, they're presenting their thoughts properly.
Thanks.
But these are just my opinions.
Yeah.
Paul, I like your comment about the not showing code. That is such a huge tendency for developers to do that. I noticed that we have different trains, and one of the on the operation train, or the shared services train that we call it, there's a lot more code that they show. And actually the developers on that side are pretty excited to see some of the lower level code, but it's a different audience on that side versus the other more business customer facing trains are you know, not interested in seeing code. And we hear feedback if we do show code, like, you know, don't do that again. So I think that's a really good comment.
Yeah, one thing about not showing code, I made that comment a couple of weeks ago to fellow developers, like, well, I want to know how it works. I want to know that technique. Well, that should be another meeting to show your fellow developers how to do something. You're trying to show the value. A lot of times, even I feel like I'm a fairly smart developer. I have no idea what you delivered, and I sort of read your code, but tell me what you delivered. Don't show me your code and logs.
Yeah, I think the argument there is that, well, the value you're getting is you're getting working software. And so I want to show you your working software and how it works.
Yeah, it goes on to that trust thing. Sometimes they don't feel there's a trust. If the trust isn't there that you actually have to show it working, then you have to address that. But yeah.
One thing that that kind of stood out to me, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this. You said a couple of times it was a suggestion to allow folks, or it's a suggestion for people to pre-record their presentation. I've always told my teams they cannot do that. I've told them, I'm like, hey, look, you just got to present, and you need to get to, and the reason behind that is that you've got to get to as close, your demonstration needs to be as close to production as possible. Like if your code is in production that you're describing, then you need to use the production side. If it's pre-production, then use that side. But I've always told them, like, and then if it doesn't function well, we all get to feel it right along with you, right?
Absolutely. And it falls down to that trust thing. I always say, like, I'll trust you that it works. If a lot of developers will say, oh yeah, it's working, and then they throw it in the production and it's not really working, it kind of puts them in the hot seat. Yeah, it actually has to work. But good teams, we know we have a lot of vested interest in making it work, making sure it's going to be production ready, and it's actually in production when we present. If it's not in production, we don't present it. So it comes down to that trust issue. Are you really, maybe if you feel like you need to screen record, or for some reason you think it's a value, maybe showing it to the PO or somebody else to prove, if there isn't that trust of, is it actually out there? So like my teams at Compassion that I've worked on were test-driven development, and it's just so much confidence that when you hit that deployment to production, it works. So other teams will just like slap some code together, tests or afterthought, and then push it out, and they didn't think about something. So that's when it starts breaking. You don't expect it.
Yeah.
I had another question. As you're presenting to the customer and they're not happy with the outcome, how do you respond to their comments?
Take notes. It's fantastic. I want that feedback. If they don't like it, then I want to know about it. So take notes, make a time to meet together. What would be better? I wouldn't say well, it depends on the mode. If you're in front of the large audience, I wouldn't take that time to discuss the design for the next. But if you're that one-on-one, hey, let's talk about this. What would you want and why? I know I've been saying to my team the last few weeks that developers are horrible UI designers, and we really are. You need a UX designer or somebody business that knows the business better to kind of help us through the thought process. And so, yeah, I would welcome that feedback and say, let's talk about that more.
We had this conversation with our PO and PM today, actually, because I guess the comment there was that they would rather see the product before it goes into production. If they're seeing it for the first time when it's in production, that's really too late. The other thing is, once it's in production and they do get comments back, that's what Agile should be all about. Is okay, we sent it out and we're getting feedback. We can adjust, we can pivot. So we should be able to welcome a lot of those comments. But as far as the product manager is concerned, he was like, yeah, I should have seen I should be able to see that and know what's going into production before it's actually in there.
That's a great comment. And also, if you do get feedback, you should prioritize it, and it's not the next thing you work on necessarily.
I have to run because King Supers is threatening to not hold my groceries for pickup anymore. But I wanted to say that this was a really good, I enjoyed this a lot. So thank you very much for talking about this topic with us. I gotta run.
Great, I'm glad you
Thanks, bye.
enjoyed it.
All right, any other burning questions on anyone's mind? All right, well then we will go ahead and give you that last 10 minutes back. Paul, thanks again for preparing and for spending some time with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Thanks all of you for being here and just participating in the conversation. And we'll hope to see you all maybe in a future Agile meetup coming up soon. Keep your eye on the site. We'll be announcing the next group of speakers and such soon as we get a few more people lined up. So check back soon, and we'll keep you updated. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.